How's it going, everybody? My name is Andrew. I am your host. This is the Angle Fantasy Basketball Podcast. This is our first episode of the off season. So we took a little bit of a break during the traditional, what's referred to as the traditional fantasy vacation, which is starting in mid-April, going all the way through late May. This is right after both redraft and dynasty leagues conclude. And this is also gives everybody time to soak in the NBA playoff experience too. So we are here today because draft season is right around the corner. So myself, as well as my co-host here, who I will introduce shortly, have done a couple of early look videos already into the 2024 draft class. One video was covering G League Ignite and international prospects. The other video was covering exclusively NCAA prospects. So those will be linked in the descriptions below if you want to check out our early evaluation on if you want to check out our early evaluation on the 2024 draft class. So we are excited to bring you a lot of new things this year. For starters, we have been behind the scenes because we started up the inaugural Angle Dynasty Basketball League. It is a 30-team real salary league. And it was first opened up to the members of our Discord server. And with great surprise, we managed to fill and start the draft of that league within 3 days. So it was a huge accomplishment. We are very excited. We have a lot of just Dynasty basketball junkies in there, a couple of guys from Point Made basketball. We have representation from Sports Ethos as well. We're very excited to have other great Dynasty minds and content creators in there with us too. So if you guys will shortly see some videos from us talking about our experience, because we are currently in the middle of that draft right now. So that's what we've been doing behind the scenes, is going through that startup draft, and now we're ready and excited to bring you some new content. So new content also behind the scenes. I've recently moved. I was bringing you or recording videos originally out in my garage. Now I got a dedicated space to do this. I have a awesome Alperen Şengün autographed jersey that's going to be up behind me shortly. So we're excited for new things, new changes, and what we're going to talk about today is new NBA players, brand spanking new rookies. So first I'm going to introduce my co-host Mitchell. How are you doing today, buddy? Are you ready for draft season?
Man, I am just completely excited. This is my favorite part of the fantasy season, evaluating prospects and really trying to hit on that home run with your first round picks. Today has been a great day. There is this crazy sale going on at my work. So I work at the company that owns the crypto arena, and we had this deal for all Clippers merch, where if you fill a whole tote bag of whatever you can find, jerseys, hoodies, sweaters, hats, golf polos. I had like 5 golf polos. I got one for Andrew. So we're going to twin one day on the golf course. But I had about $1,400 worth, and I only spent $50. So I crammed that, and I'm, coming out of today a very happy man. And now I get to spend my night with Andrew talking about some upcoming prospects for this draft. So very excited.
Very good. A lot of positivity going on over there. And you did the absolute right thing, which is go after the golf merchandise first. That's exactly what I would have done too. So great call there, buddy.
Yes, Andrew. Yes.
All right. So let's go over the judging criteria of what we're going to be doing today. So this is going to be kind of a warm up for us in our off-season draft content. What we're doing today is a mock draft. We are only doing the lottery. So this is the top 14 teams. As part of today's exercise, Mitchell is going to be representing the odd numbered franchises, all of the teams picking from the odd number slots, and I'm going to be representing the even numbered franchises. So what we're doing today, this is not an official big board, and this is not an official dynasty ranking. We are drafting based off of real life NBA team need, trying to predict where we think these specific rookies might go. In this exercise, we are also not going to predict any trades. So we're just going to assume all of the top 14 is boring and there's no trade movement in the top 14. So all the teams are going to stay where they're at, and we're picking specifically based off of team need. Shortly soon, you're going to see a big board video from Mitch and I. That's going to be much more representative of our official dynasty ranking of the 2024 rookie class. We will also release an official dynasty ranking list covering the 2024 class, and that list is going to go pretty deep. It's going to cover well into the second round, as well as guys who will most likely be like undrafted free agents, two-way contract players. We're going to get into all of that. We will also evaluate our big board again after the real life NBA draft, because part of what we're discussing today is the real life landing spot for these players, especially for some of them, is going to have a massive impact on their dynasty value. So we're going to evaluate them all based off of raw talent. Soon, what we're doing today is evaluating where we think they might land. And then, of course, once we put those two together, we're going to have a much more official big board and dynasty rank for you guys for when dynasty rookie draft season happens for you in your dynasty leagues. So let's go ahead and get started. So first pick on the clock, like we said, we're going to start off with Mitchell, who's doing the odd numbered teams. So Atlanta Hawks, you are on the clock.
Yeah, so with Atlanta, there are two main contenders to go number one. So far, according to the sports books, there's only really two. It's Alex Sarr and Zaccharie Risacher, two French prospects, one playing in France and the other that played in Australia and the NBL. For me, I think the easy pick is Alex Sarr. Alex Sarr is the prototypical big man in the NBA. I've seen comparisons to Evan Mobley and Jaren Jackson Jr. He has that archetype that he's 7'1" with shoes. He can dribble the ball. He can handle it a bit. He could stretch the floor out, where he did show a lot of inconsistencies, but a lot of great flashes as well. And one of the main selling points is, although he did have a kind of a rough and down year playing for the Perth Wildcats, I think he only played around 19 minutes a game. But when he did play against the G League Ignite, playing against his own competition, his own age level, he looked like the consensus number one guy. And for that reason, I believe the Atlanta Hawks are going to be sold on that potential, especially because of their need of defensive talent. I know Clint Capella is supposed to be a great defender, but let's be honest, he's a little bit past his prime. The Hawks have been bottom 5 team in the defensive end, and I think Alex Sarr will provide that defensive foundation that they really, really need. And if they take Alex Sarr, he's going to be a great pick and roll partner for Trae Young for many years to come. So for this exercise, the Atlanta Hawks are going to take Alex Sarr.
All right.
Now it'll be Andrew. This pick is tough because the Wizards have a ton of needs, but there really isn't a specific prospect that really stands out here.
So again, I'm going to stress that this is not a big board. This is us predicting what we think a specific franchise is going to do. Because in this position, it's killing me because I want to pick somebody else so badly. But I think, and I'm pretty sure, the Wizards are probably going to go with Zaccharie Risacher. So there's a bit of a recency bias in here too, because I ideally would love to see Nikola Topic go to Washington. I think he has amazing potential to be at the top of this class dynasty-wise, landing at a spot like Washington. There's one other spot that I like a lot for him too, but we'll see if I can maybe grab him there. But for now, I think the Wizards are going to go with Zaccharie Risacher because of the shooting ability. That is one of the main things that he has over Topic, even though they obviously still need a point guard too. I mean, Washington just drafted a wing, and they also have Deni Avdija too, but in the NBA, you can never really have too many. Also, Risacher has he's 6'10", so this is somebody who could also potentially play the 4 spot for them. I know Deni can do that too, but they can kind of go in a jumbo size lineup or even a small ball lineup, so they can have a true center in there with Risacher, Avdija, and Bilal Coulibaly, or they can do more of a small ball lineup with Risacher at center, Avdija at power forward, Coulibaly at the 3, and then 2 other guards alongside them. When I mentioned earlier about recency bias, Risacher's had a very up and down season. He started off really well, which is put him pretty high on draft boards. He had even been number 1 on draft boards at some points, and this was back in like January, things around there. And then his season dipped off for a bit, but lately he's been absolutely going off. And I think that's probably having a bit of an effect of people's opinion on him, as well as draft evaluators' opinions on him, especially over somebody like Nikola Topic, who is currently injured and not really able to participate in many pre-draft activities. So I do admit that Risacher does have a pretty high ceiling. I worry about his potential floor, but I absolutely see why people like him a lot. I don't necessarily love the fit for Washington. I think they would do better with having a pure creator on the team, but I think they're going to go Risacher due to the physical tools and potential skill sets there, as well as obviously it does allow a lot of flexibility with their lineups. But I'm hoping that at some point they do address their guard issues too. So we're going to go with Risacher at number 2.
Andrew, I do want to point out, I like how you talked about Risacher's potential of playing small ball 5, as we've seen a lot of success in Houston with Sengun out, where Jabari Smith Jr. played some small ball 5 as well, where Risacher does have a similar archetype. He is a pretty strong rebounder for his size. So I could see that happening, and I do agree that flexibility could be pretty lucrative for the Wizards moving forward. And hopefully in this draft, I do want to reinstate that this draft is a lot of you're drafting for that number 2 guy, right? Someone who's going to be a great supporter to your Batman. So you're essentially drafting a Robin, or Risacher could be a very strong number 2 option. And in next year's draft, there's going to be a lot of potential number 1 options. Think of Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, and Dylan Harper. These guys can be your potential number 1 options, and Risacher would be a great complementary fit next to them.
Imagine now I'm just theorizing a massive jumbo lineup in Washington with Cooper Flagg, Risacher, Denny Avdia, and Block Coulibaly all on the floor.
Yeah, that would be amazing, man. Like you think, right? Like Cooper Flagg is like Andre Karolinko plus, right? Mm-hmm. Think of that playmaking. Maybe he could be, kind of like a tertiary creator, similar to what we're seeing in like Scotty Barnes running the offense. There is a lot of potential if they do land that number 1 pick. And even with Dylan Harper, a 6'5", 6'6" point guard who plays like Cade Cunningham, who can run the offense, there's a lot of possibilities with Risacher as a number 2 option. So we'll see.
Yeah, now you got the wheels spinning in my head. Maybe they pass on Topic now and tank again and go for Harper as their point guard instead. Maybe. Yeah, let's move on to pick 3. Who we got on the clock here?
So with pick 3, there's a lot of rumors circulating between two guys. And one of them is one of my personal favorites since the start of the college season. It's Reed Sheppard. Reed Sheppard has, all the intangibles you'd want. He's a hard worker. He's going to play well under Ime Udoka. He's a shooter, something that Houston needs. I believe Dylan Brooks was their number 1 shooter in 3-point percentage last year. And with Reed Sheppard, that'll surely change. Another option that they do have that I've been hearing rumors circulating is with Donovan Clingan. One thing that I do want to point out, I don't know if you draft Donovan Clingan number 3 to be a backup center. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but at the same time, he does fit that similar mold and scheme that they like to play with under Sengun. So Donovan Clingan, it could be a lucrative option because of his playmaking ability. He could protect the rim for a defensive-sounded Houston Rockets team, but you're not drafting a backup center at number 3. And for that reason, I'm going to take Reed Sheppard because of his shooting ability, and he could just slide in, playing the 2 position, move Jalen Green to the 3, and maybe eventually he could be, the point guard option of the future once his name Fred VanVleet eventually gets moved on with, because not this year, but the following year, 2025-26, it is a team option. And also, I do want to point out, Amen Thompson, he still has a lot of concern of running the team as a full-on point guard. He played that role as the 4 option, starting with Jabari Smith when Sengun was out, where he really thrived as the off-ball cutter and defensive playmaker. So with that being said, I am going to take Reed Sheppard here, and I think it does make a lot of sense for Houston.
All right, very good. So let's move on over. We're going to stay within the state of Texas. We're going to go over to San Antonio now. So San Antonio has needs across the board. And I think this is going to be where they finally land a point guard. Obviously, too, there just seems to be some sort of familiarity and comfortability with drafting European players to the San Antonio Spurs. And I believe that pick 4 is going to be a great spot for Nikola Topic to fall to the San Antonio Spurs. And I say fall because I believe he should go earlier than that, and dynasty-wise will likely be valued earlier than that, because if he lands in either one of San Antonio or Washington, I think there's a great spike to the potential value of Nikola Topic dynasty-wise. So being in San Antonio, obviously we love the fit Lob City partnership with Victor Wembanyama. Just having that type of partnership in general, it benefits both ends. Like, for example, we can look over, we'll stay in Texas again. We can look over in Dallas and see how much of a great partnership and benefit that Derek Lively's rookie season had playing alongside Luka Doncic. So this can kind of be a flip of that situation where Nikola Topic could essentially have a great rookie season because he's playing alongside Victor Wembanyama. No longer do we need to see Jeremy Sohan try to run point. I mean, obviously they looked great when Trey Jones was running point full time towards the end of the season because they actually brought in somebody who knows how to do that job. And this is something that Topic is somebody who also knows how to do that job. Obviously, he's got about 5 inches on Trey Jones, a good amount of weight on him too. This is a much bigger player. And at this point, it's not like Trey Jones is a shooter either. So while Topic still works on that, which is pretty much the primary weakness of his game, is shooting, there's not going to be necessarily a massive threat of somebody taking away his minutes like there would be in other places. Like if he went to Houston, for example, Amen Thompson's there, Fred VanVleet's there, Jalen Green's there, all these guys that need the ball in their hands. So being in San Antonio, I think, is a great fit for Topic. I think this spikes his dynasty value if he lands there. I don't like his dynasty value as much in different places, like if he goes to Detroit, if he goes to Houston, if he goes to Charlotte. I don't like any of that. So San Antonio or Washington is where we really want to see him go. And I think just the fit alongside everybody there, they need a point guard. And 4 is a great spot to land Topic at.
Off the record, 5 of those inches are his neck. And that's why he's 6'7". Because if you look at his shoulders, it's like so sloped down.
It is,
and his neck is just like a giraffe neck.
Yeah, that is pretty true, actually. I know. Hopefully it fills out a little bit better. Let's look at it. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah. Because people are like on the comments on like, NBA draft, right? Like, there's no way he's 6'7". But then he's like standing next to like Nikola Jovic, and he's like almost the same height, but his shoulders are like so like sloped down. It's so funny. Okay. So for the 5th pick, I believe the Pistons are considering 2 potential players. One is, a lot of people are pointing towards Montas Buzelis, but I don't think they're going to go that route. Well, I don't know. It's the Detroit Pistons, so they might. But the reason why I don't think so in terms of fit, they have someone very similar who they drafted last year at the 5 spot, Sarr Thompson, someone who is a long wing who could handle the ball, defend the ball, play make the ball, but also has, shooting weaknesses. Sure, Montas Buzelis has some shooting inconsistencies. He has a great form, but it's never really panned out throughout the whole season in his solo campaign with the Ignite. And for that reason, Detroit really needs a secondary scorer, someone who could be efficient, someone who could stretch the floor. And I'm thinking Detroit is going to take your boy, Dalton Knecht.
Oh.
Yeah, this one's spicy. And, remember, this is a mock draft. In no way, shape, or form would I consider Dalton Knecht a top 5 rookie pick, given his age and lack of defensive stats. But in terms of real life, Dalton Knecht fits everything that Detroit needs. We've seen Simone Fontecchio thrive in that similar role. We've seen Bojan Bogdanovic thrive in that similar role. But Dalton Knecht is someone who fits their timeline. He's around the same age as Cade Cunningham, Sarr Thompson. He might be a little bit older, but he stretches the floor and provides a great positional need on the wing.
I like his verticality too. Like him and Sarr Thompson are both going to be, getting up there on some rebounds together. So, that this is a duo that could potentially be a little bit safer in that department, not getting dominated on the boards if they decide to play small. I mean, obviously Jalen Duren there too, like a combo of Jalen Duren, Sarr Thompson, and Dalton Knecht's actually a good amount of, literal vertical ability there. So that's actually a good pick. I like that one, and I love the comparisons to both Bojan and Fontecchio. I think Knecht has similar games to both of them, similar size to both of them too. So I absolutely see the fit there. especially number one, because Detroit can sign Fontecchio or re-sign him, I should say, and then he and Connect can kind of share that role together. Or they don't need Fontecchio and just put Connect in that role in the first place. So there is some options there with Detroit if they go with Connect. So I like the spicy pick on that one because it fits really well, and that's kind of what we're assuming here in this mock draft is what we think a franchise is going to need based off best potential fit. Okay, let's go on over to Charlotte. I almost feel like we need to bring Braxton in for this one. So let's.
So this is a tough one for sure.
This is a tough one. You know, who am I trying to pick for my boy Brax here? Okay, so I'm not gonna pick. We're not looking at point guards for Charlotte right now. Obviously, LaMelo Ball is there. They just also got Trey Mann and Vasily Micic. I think they're fine in that category. They did get rid of Terry Rozier, so a scoring guard could be on the table. Potentially looking at Rob Dillingham here. What you mentioned earlier about like I don't want to see Klingan drafted behind Şengün because you don't want to see, you know, just to be drafted to be a backup. There's some teams that I think are really trying to utilize this two center rotation, like the Knicks with Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein is for one example. The Mavericks with Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively is another example. Like none of those guys that I mentioned have really like the talent level of Şengün, which is why we don't want to see somebody play behind Şengün. But these types of guys are rim running centers, and that's also pretty accurate description of what Mark Williams is too. So imagine playing the Charlotte Hornets and one of Mark Williams and Donovan Clingan is always on the floor. That's a pretty menacing situation to deal with. I think Miles Buzelis could potentially be of an option here, but if they re-sign Miles Bridges, then that pretty much takes care of that, you know, power forward, small forward category right there too. Plus they have Brandon Miller on the squad as well. So I'm going to predict that the Charlotte Hornets go and try to follow some of these teams that go with this big rim running center double rotation. I think Charlotte's going to take Donovan Clingan in a partnership with Mark Williams. One of those two guys is always going to be on the floor, and this might affect Nick Richards.
Man, can you imagine a double center rotation with two giants over 7'2"?
Mm-hmm.
That's just nuts. But I do like your point. I think it would work. I definitely think it would work because they're both defensive anchors, just like Gafford, just like Lively. And, you know, the Mavs are proving it could be a championship formula moving forward with splitting two very talented rim running centers that are both great defensive anchors.
Especially if you have a good pick and roll maestro, you know, LaMelo Ball's on the team. You know, there's some other good ball handlers. Micic can come in and run the pick and roll too. So, you know, it's something that could work. And then there's a few teams that are trying to follow this archetype of always having a center on the floor. So it's something that I think the Hornets could potentially pull up. And there was a little bit of a factor of best available player there too. Like I know Rob Dillingham is really high on my list talent-wise too, but they did kind of just get a similar player in Trey Mann. So I think filling in that center rotation with Clingan is where they're going to go and create a much more menacing defense for them because that's obviously a big need of theirs. So now let's go on to the West Coast. What do we think Portland's doing here, Mitch?
Yeah, this one's tough because, you know, although Portland on paper has a very talented and promising roster, it didn't really translate at all into, you know, the standings. You know, I do want to say I do believe Sharp and Scoot are their backcourt of the future. Maybe Simon stays. Right now it's Simon's team, but I don't think it's his team long term as Scoot develops as their true point guard. But with that being said, since they do have a great center rotation with Ayton, Reef, and Time Lord, if healthy, I think their next priority is the wing. Because right now they're starting Kamara and Jeremy Grant, who's a little bit older, that doesn't fit the timeline. And for that reason, I really like Manas Buzelis here because he provides that versatility on the defensive end with a team that's very lacking on defense. He can provide that switchability and cover ground because as of now, you know, Scoot, Simons, they're not great defenders at all at this level. You know, there's a lot of like miscues, misreads. Manas, you know, I know in our prospect video, you compared him to Jonathan Isaac. someone who could be a great weak side defender, protect the rim a bit, and also slide his feet onto smaller guards and be a great switchable defender as well. If he can improve his shot, I love the spacing, the pacing of this future Portland Trail Blazers. They can run, they can move fast with the ball. Modest would, fit perfectly with this squad as they eventually phase out Jeremy Grant.
And Modest was once initially talked about as, the crown jewel of the 2022 class. I know, I'm going to talk about this later with you after we get through the rest of the mock draft, but I know obviously many people, knock on the 22 class for not, or sorry, the 24 class for not having a good amount of star power. But Modest was someone in the very early conversations about this class who was talked pretty highly of as, potentially going as number one in this class. Obviously, the rough season with the G League Ignite didn't help. I mean, you and I went to one of those games. It's just a pretty, chaotic, disorganized system that they're running over there. Obviously, that team's no longer continuing moving forward, operating in the G League. And we can kind of see why. So, maybe in a better environment, such as Portland, we can see some really good progression and potential of Modest to maybe where we look back at some point and say, man, this guy probably should have went number one. So I think Modest is somebody who still holds that distinction there where, this is someone who does have a pretty high ceiling, maybe the highest ceiling of the guys remaining, but the floor could be pretty low too, especially after the struggles that we saw with the G League Ignite. So I like that fit for him.
I do want to point out, I love how you made that point very early in the season after the 2023 draft was completed and underway. Modest was that early number one pick consensus player, but that was quickly shut down after the Perth Wildcats exhibition game where Alex Sarr just completely dominated on both ends of the floor. But Modest has a lot of categorical contributions. He's a well-versed prospect. And I think, freshen my memory a bit, but Case, shout out to Case. He said, why draft Cooper Flagg when you can get Modest Buzelis in the mid-lotto? I thought that was very interesting. He does pose a similar skill set to Cooper in terms of multi-categorical production. But you just don't trust it yet, just because we haven't seen that consistency, even though we have seen it in short spans.
That's funny you bring up Cooper, because I literally watched a video of Modest and Cooper playing one-on-one on Twitter the other day.
I saw that too.
All right, so let's go back to San Antonio again. Now we're at pick 8. So again, we're not predicting or assuming any trades. Maybe San Antonio does something, but and for this exercise, we're predicting that they only are going to stay put and pick at both of their slots. So going back over to review, so we're actually halfway done here. Sarr 1, Risacher 2, Sheppard 3. We took Topic for the Spurs at number 4. Then Knecht went 5, Klingan 6, and Buzelis 7. Here at number 8 for San Antonio, there's obviously still a lot of needs across the board, but scoring and offense is always going to be a primary need. Specific players I liked Malachi Branham a lot coming out of the draft. He's not, shooting as well or taking over, dominating as much offensively as I would like him to. He's shown some flashes here and there, but his first 2 seasons in the league have both looked identical. There's not really much progression for him there. Blake Wesley hasn't really turned out too well. So a lot of their attempts at 2 guards have not worked out super well. It's pretty much only just Devin Carter operating in that category, but he's more of a 2-3 hybrid. So for that reason, for offensive creation, I'm looking at 2 different guys here for that. I'm looking at either Rob Dillingham or I'm looking at Ron Holland. San Antonio does already have some wing size. Keldon Johnson is there. Jeremy Sohan is there. So I think San Antonio is going to draft 2 guards. I think their first one that they took was Nikola Topic. I think they are going to draft Rob Dillingham as well. He can play off the ball. He can play on the ball. He's a great shooter, a great offensive creator, and they just need somebody else there to help take the pressure off of Wembanyama, especially if they don't end up keeping Keldon Johnson or moving on from other players that have the ball in their hands a good amount. They're going to need someone like Rob Dillingham at that point. This is also, I would say, for my pick analysis here, this is also the heaviest influence of best available pick. They easily could have taken Holland or even Cody Williams at this spot, but I think just the overall talent for me, I'm going to have to side with Rob Dillingham on this one. I think that this is the direction San Antonio is going to go, taking two guards. They needed a massive backcourt rotation in general, backcourt rotation upgrade in general. So getting Topic and Dillingham, I think, are two great fits that are, great guards that are going to play alongside Victor Wembanyama. I know they could have gone with the wing, but, Mitch, what do you think about that? Do you think you would have gone wing or guard here for San Antonio?
With San Antonio, they're basically running on a blank slate, right? So I'm just taking the two best available players. Yes, you already took a point guard in Nikola Topic, but Rob Dillingham and Topic, their strengths, they don't overlap. They're very independent of one another and what they provide on the court. So I do think they complement each other. Dillingham could be that microwave scorer. Maybe he starts the season off the bench for them, and Topic is the one who runs the offense. But I don't see, there's no real reason for me to shut this idea down. And with that being said, I do love Rob Dillingham on the Spurs. That's one of my preferential landing spots for him, other than the Washington Wizards. But even then, Dillingham at number 2 is a little bit too rich for me.
Mm-hmm. All right, now let's move over to the team who, was a playoff team just 2 years ago, but suffered catastrophic injuries throughout the season. Doing so, they decided to go into a full nosedive tank. We saw them roster or basically start and play the most different lineups in NBA players in a season. There were so many different guys that were playing for Memphis, it was hard to keep track. So with all of that tanking effort, they've earned themselves the 9th pick in the 2024 draft. So, Mitch, what do you think Memphis is going to do here?
This is where it gets truly interesting, just because there are a lot of rumors that Memphis does want to trade this pick. So we really don't know where their head is at. I'm just taking my best educated guess. I do know that Memphis does need starting center next to Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren is really more of a stretch 4, even though he is 7 feet tall. It's very evident looking into the FIBA World Cup. Playing center is not his strong point. He was benched a lot of the time just because he couldn't grab rebounds against a lot of those bruising centers. But, Filipowski is a little bit too rich for me right here at 9. And also, what's his name? Kel Ware is a little too rich, and Missy is a little too rich for me as well. So I think they just go best available and use this pick as kind of like a trade chip. And for that reason, I think they're going to go Ron Holland just because of his overall pedigree, being the number 1 prospect in the 2023 high school recruiting class. And, there is a lot of ambiguity moving forward on their wing position. Yes, GG Jackson flashed a lot of potential. Yes, Vince Williams flashed a lot of potential as well as a 2-way player. But those were during losing situations. So maybe they roll with Ron Holland and see what he has. If he has a lot of flashes, maybe they sell high and get a veteran talent at the center, and then they roll with GG. But for this exercise, I think they go best available, and that is Ron Holland.
And for whoever's taken at the number 9 pick, there's financial incentive there too. Anybody who's taken at the number 9 pick is going to make more money contract-wise than what Vince Williams and GG Jackson are currently making. So if a wing does get picked there is some financial incentive for him to get some more playing time too. So I like that for Ron Holland. Like you said, it could be a trade chip too. Someone like Memphis, or later on in this exercise, OKC, are prime candidates to make trades because they're teams that are expected to win. Memphis, when healthy. And a trade at this point is something that could really bolster their value to land, an already proven product instead of trying to just take somebody from the draft. But this is a good draft to try to just take best fit, a best role player available that fits your needs and fits your squad. This is a good draft class to do that in. So Ron Holland does present a lot of helpful options to Memphis. I like him as just, a volume producer if we're talking fantasy basketball wise. So a lot, points, rebounds, assists, 3-pointers. We like that coming from Ron Holland.
Steals too.
Steals too.
Per 36, I think he averaged almost over 3 steals a game. So
well, that's what you
someone
want
to
to
keep an
see.
eye on.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's an indicator that you want to see too. You want to see him physically dominating the competition that he was previously playing and what's supposed to be a lower level competition. But in the G League, these are guys that have some NBA experience too. So physical domination of them by getting a good amount of steals, or if we're talking about big men blocks, is a good indicator of potentially being able to hang in the NBA. So that's what we want to see with Holland. So this is another obvious place to go best fit available, because if somehow Klingan slides to 9, you have to do that if you're Memphis. But if he doesn't, you just got to go best available at this point. So I like that selection with Ron Holland. Okay, back to the West Coast again. We now have the Utah Jazz on the board. This is for pick number 10. So we can bring up right now the statement that Stephon Castle made, saying that he doesn't want to go to any teams that are not in need of a point guard. So this puts us at a crossroads right here with what Utah is potentially going to do. They already have, they have guys like Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, but most especially a great name, a name that was ranked highly amongst the 2023 class. They have Keontae George on this roster too. So I don't think that point guard is necessarily the best fit and position for Utah at this time. They need good wing size, and Castle represents that good wing size, but just this whatever statement that this statement that he made is something that's potentially affecting his draft stock here, because there's teams who were maybe just going to take a chance on him, even though they weren't planning to play him on point guard, but now he's indicating he doesn't want to play point guard, or sorry, he only wants to play point guard. So I think that Utah's in need of a wing. This is not this. I think personally this is best player available, but some could have some good arguments to say otherwise. But for wing help, especially if they don't keep Lauri Markkanen moving forward, if John Collins gets moved on. I mean, they have Taylor Hendricks, they have Bryce Sensabaugh, but if you have a wing rotation, or if you're playing both Taylor Hendricks and Cody Williams on the floor at the same time, I love the defensive versatility and switchability there with those two. You could even get into small ball lineups, Markkanen, Williams, and Hendricks on the floor at the same time, because Hendricks has a lot of great potential for Utah, and I think Cody Williams kind of represents a very similar profile to what Hendricks is supposed to be. And like I mentioned earlier, you can never really have too many wings. This is what I mentioned earlier with Washington, and I think that Utah might try to do something similar here. So I think they're going to fully buy into the Keontae George project at point guard moving forward. Probably look past Castle and just take more defensive versatility to someone who's supposed to basically do the same thing that they went after with Taylor Hendricks. And this is also in the same range of the draft last year where they got Hendricks too. And I talked a lot throughout the early looks the early look videos that we did, and just the pre-draft process in general during the season, how much I really liked Cody Williams and his overall potential. Not just because he's the brother of Jalen Williams. I'm trying to look past that as best as I can. What I'm seeing is a player who showed a lot of domination during the early part of the season with Colorado. He suffered through some injuries, and I'm going to cut him some slack on that. So I wanted him to obviously have a great season and end up in the top 5, but due to those injuries, I think he's going to slide to 10 here. But I do like that fit and landing spot for him in Utah. He's going to stay pretty close to where he went to college at as well. So I like this fit. He's gonna be pretty close to home here.
Man, I was just hoping he would fall to OKC. It just seems like so poetic playing with his big bro. But your pick makes a lot of sense. All right, this is a really weird one, because Chicago has been playing that middle territory. Are they good enough to compete? Should they tank? Should they? It's just like, it's so confusing. And the thing is, they haven't made a trade since the Vucevic one, I think since 2021 or 22. So whoever they draft, they're probably going to keep for the most part. And I have to go with someone who I think has the best long-term potential. And I think they're going to go with Stephon Castle. This could be controversial just because of like Kobe White has really produced over this past year in a great most improved player campaign. Another one was like Ao, who really showed himself as an overall talent, someone who's a great stability piece. But I think they just go with the fences and play Stephon Castle maybe at the 3 as Zach LaVine eventually phases out, using him as like an off the ball cutter, someone who can make great decision making, playmaking, defend with optimal wing size. So he can also guard some of those. He can guard 1 through 4 theoretically, and he has some girth to him as well, weighing over like 215 pounds. I think they eventually move on from LaVine and see what they can get for him. And just because of his size, I think Stephon Castle makes a lot of sense here. I don't really like the other options, potentially Kyle Filipowski, but they still do have Vucevic. And I know they're going to try to make another run for it. I don't see Chicago blowing it up anytime soon because their priority has always been ticket sales and making playoffs. So yeah, with that being said, I'm going to predict, given the board, that they just take best available, and that should be Stephon Castle, who has been rumored to go as high as number 2 with the Wizards.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fit too. You know, we're talking about a national champion here, so I think Chicago's going to want the best plug and play, produce immediate option. I don't think Chicago's going to take a Tidjane Salaun, you know, project type of option and see if he develops. I think Chicago wants someone who can produce right here, right now. So with the board options that you had, with who was available, Castle probably represents the best of those options that are available. All right. Now we're back to OKC. So obviously, like Mitch mentioned, if in real life somehow Cody Williams can manage to fall to here, that would be great. But what we all want to see is OKC take another big man. I'm weighing 2 different options here. Number 1 is what a lot of us would consider the most OKC pick of all time, which is Tidjane Salaun. The other option, which I think the consensus wants to see happen, is Kyle Filipowski. So it's really hard to weigh between those two, what I think OKC is probably going to do or what a lot of us really want OKC to do. If they took Filipowski, I love that flexibility. He can totally play alongside Chet Holmgren. There's really no other option to play center besides Chet Holmgren. And like they can run like they have the other Jalen Williams, they have Kenrich Williams. You know, Ousmane Dieng is still in the process of development. It would be nice if he was here right now, but you know, thinking to the Thunder situation, are they just going to go down another path similar to Dieng and grab Salaun, which is someone who's more than likely going to play for the Oklahoma City Blue to start off and, you know, get his development in from there? Or is the team who just won the first seed in the Western Conference going to want a more experienced plug and play win now option? So I think this is finally the year. I'm obviously not, since we're not going to predict trades, I'm going to get spicy and predict that this is finally the year that OKC picks a win now player instead of a draft and stash and develop type of player. I think I want to go with OKC taking Kyle Filipowski on this one. This is addressing the massive size need that they have. They need a 7-footer on this team. Chet is great. Chet is somebody that is obviously a building block for this franchise. They just need additional size to complement him. You worry about the physical load of Chet playing with centers all the time and have nobody else to take that burden off him. The other Jalen Williams, J-Will, I think he played like 12 minutes a night or less. That's really not helping the physical toll being a big man in the NBA gives on a player. It's not really relieving Chet of that. So we need somebody else to help with that workload. We need somebody who's going to produce now because, like I said, this is a team that just won the 1 seed in the West. So let's see Oklahoma City go with the Duke prospect, Kyle Filipowski, who I do, you know, based off the article that you wrote about him previously, Mitch, and based about some other things that I've seen with Filipowski, there are some good indicators here of what this guy can do as an option, kind of like almost like a Nikola Vucevic type of player. So I want to see OKC do this. So for this exercise, we're going to go with Kyle Filipowski.
Man, I really wanted to take Filipowski at 13, just because, you know, he's my guy, but also, you know, he'd also be a great fit. With that being said, Filipowski on the Thunder just makes so much sense, right? Like if they wanted a rim running big, then why did they trade Derek Lively and move forward, right, to get Cason Wallace at 10 last year? So, you know, they really like that connectedness and, you know, playmaking. I mean, Lively has shown a lot of playmaking this year, but we didn't know that pre-draft,
No, we
right?
did
So
not. No, Lively was
we
very
did not.
raw. Hmm.
Yeah. And you know, Filipowski makes a lot of sense. He's a great rebounder. He's a great passer. He's shown that he could stretch the floor at times and shoot the three. So yeah, it just makes so much sense. And I hope for fantasy purposes that does happen. So with the 13th pick, I believe the Sacramento Kings, I really, really want to say Jared McCain or Devin Carter, but that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense at all. Keon Ellis really established himself as potentially a starting caliber player next to uh, De'Aaron Fox, and Devin Carter is a similar player to Keon Ellis as well. They have a lot of shooting already. So does Jared McCain make a lot of sense for a team that's already lacking in defense? I don't know. The one big need, and it's showing here on Fanspo, is power forward. Harrison Barnes is not a great long-term fit for that team. He's a solid guy, so I'm really between two players. The other option is to pick someone to replace Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes has been a steady contributor for the Kings, but he's not someone who is a great long-term piece with upside. So I'm between two players. One is Tyler Smith, and the other is just taking the swing on Tidjane Salaun. And it's really tough because Tyler Smith is a great shooter. He doesn't play defense whatsoever, despite his length and size. But maybe they hit a home run with Tidjane Salaun. And for that reason, I think they're going to do it. They need some defensive potential over there, some length, some athleticism. He can run the floor. His shooting is a little bit streaky, but he's shown a lot of great flashes. So I think Tidjane Salaun could be a good home run pick for the Sacramento Kings that do need potential star upside.
Very good. I like that as a home run swing for them as well. I like a potential fit alongside, like being on the court at the same time as Keegan Murray, maybe both of them alongside Sabonis too, if they start doing some jumbo things. So I like that pick. Okay, now we're rounding this out with the second pick for the Portland Trailblazers, which is going to be pick 14. Okay, so when we were talking about Portland earlier, we weren't looking at many scoring guard options for them, such as like Rob Dillingham, because they have Scoot Henderson, they have Shaedon Sharpe, and they have Anthony Simons. They also have Malcolm Brogdon, but obviously he's not in their long-term plans. So all three of those guys represent to me Scoot being more of a true point guard, and then Sharpe and Simons being just true scoring guards. So most of their profiles being offensive. The only type of guard that they don't really have is the defensive profile guard. Someone similar to Mitch mentioned earlier, somebody like a Keon Ellis. So a complementary defensive guard to go alongside or possibly play alongside these other offense first guards such as Scoot, Simons, and Sharpe. So this is where in this spot I like Devin Carter at number 14 for
I love that.
the Portland Trailblazers, and great rebounding ability as well too. So this is potential to be some a great couple of fits for Portland, because like you mentioned, which is very true, on paper that team last year looked like they could have been a lot better. So if there are just needs to be some addresses of specific needs and fits, maybe the 2024 draft is the place where Portland's going to be able to figure that out. So I'm going to go with Devin Carter at 14, and this means that Portland is walking away from this draft with Matas Buzelis and Devin Carter, two guys who could potentially change the defensive identity of this team. The offensive identity is there. The offense is going to flow through Scoot, Sharpe, and Simons, but they need help on the defensive end, and I think that's where Buzelis and what our final pick of this draft is going to be, which is going to be Devin Carter. So this is going to round out our top 14 here. So again, as review, Alex Sarr to Atlanta at 1, Risacher to the Wizards at 2, Sheppard to Houston at 3, Topic to the Spurs at 4. We have Knecht going to the Pistons at 5, Clingan going to Charlotte at 6. I love it. Matas is going to get picked at 7. That could be an absolute steal right there. Dillingham going to the Spurs at 8. So Spurs walking away with 2 guards. Ron Holland, best available, going to Memphis at 9. Cody Williams, another best available, going to Jazz at 10. Stephon Castle will go to Chicago. Basically, they're going to get another redo try at Dalen Terry. They're going to get a much better version. Kyle Filipowski goes to OKC at 12. Salaun's getting the home run swing taken on him by Sacramento, which once we get past that, once we get past like 11, I start liking more the idea of just taking a swing in Salaun at that point. And then Portland just fully addresses defensive identity issues, and they go with the tough-nosed, hard-minded Devin Carter for this one. So again,
and Andrew, Devin Carter does make a lot of sense because I don't know. I said this earlier that Simons may not be a long-term fit. So plug Devin Carter in next to Scoot. Sharp plays the 3. Modest plays the 4. Ayton's at 5 with the timeshare with Time Lord. That's a really well-balanced squad that has a lot of switchable defenders, but also has the offensive firepower to potentially blow teams away, kind of like the Sacramento Kings.
Portland should give us a call. We can fix that roster.
Definitely.
All right, so that concludes our mock draft exercise for today. So again, future videos are going to be big board, so that's going to be much more representative of our overall dynasty rankings of these guys. And then, of course, a final big board will take place immediately after the NBA draft, because that's where we get a much better idea of their dynasty value once we see the franchise that these guys officially land with. So thank you so much for tuning in with us today. You can easily find us on YouTube at Angle Fantasy BB, at Twitter at Angle Fantasy BB, and be sure to hop in our Discord server as well. We run leagues through the Discord server. Again, we filled up our Dynasty League, so there's lots of talk and chatter about that going on in there. Or if you just want to come in and talk with us in our golf channel that we put in there, that's our new thing we're trying out, and it's pretty popular. So come on in, talk about fantasy basketball, talk about golf. We're here. We're ready to hang out. So feel free, again, if you are new here, subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, follow us on Twitter, and we'll see you guys next time.